Hello, everybody. I'm Mike from the Rewatch Project podcast, and I am a Trekkie watching classic Doctor Who for the first time. This is a little bit different, though. I am looking at the 1965 Doctor Who and the Daleks movie. This was recommended to me by a few folks on the comments of recent episodes, suggesting that I take a look at this. I have never seen it. I know very little about it, apart from the fact that it stars Peter Cushing, and that it is, I believe, an adaptation of the serial that I've just finished watching, The Daleks. So this will work, I guess, as somewhat of a palate cleanser, a sorbet, if you will. Yeah, I'm going to hit pause. I'm going to watch this film. I'm going to react to it. I'm very curious to see what this thing is, how much it has in common, how canonical it is to the Doctor Who oeuvre. But yeah, enough talk. Let's watch. I do love this era of film. Okay, so Terry Nation didn't write the screenplay. My dad handed me down all of his Eagle, Dan Dare comics when I was a kid. So this film's already speaking my language. Very sumptuous looking. I think I've mentioned on a podcast that I'm a big fan of the Amicus and Hammer horror and suspense and science fiction films of the 50s through to the 70s. And I guess not just because of the presence of Peter Cushing, but already getting a vibe of those here. But yeah, great to see. Really curious about this thing.
Goodness, Ian will be here in a moment. Let's go
Ian.
ready.
And there are a couple here.
There. My latest invention.
What, a police box?
Of course not.
This is TARDIS.
TARDIS?
It's Dad's.
This is bizarre. It's like watching Doctor Who with flu, like suffering from influenza. Everything's there, but it's all blended and mixed up. So we've got Susan, who's a young child. We've got Ian and Barbara, who seem to be a couple. We've got Doctor Who, the inventor, who has invented a TARDIS. So, and it's in colour and looks like a movie. So this is very, very interesting.
Time and relative dimension in space.
See, more expensive, but it doesn't look as good. It's not as iconic.
Opposite dimension.
My little fellow scientist. These charges will then be transferred in time and space.
I am enjoying how colourful this
in
is.
their proper order and their proper place.
Sound. Where's the sound effect?
Rather exciting, isn't it?
And Peter Cushing he's a great physical actor, isn't he? I mean, he can be doddery, but at the same time, you know, if you've watched his Van Helsing performance or his evil Baron Frankenstein character, he's just as likely to hoon himself off a giant table and like grab curtains and spin around the room. He's a really awesome physical actor as well. So I could already tell that although this is very different and there's a little bit of a readjustment, I think if I can go with this, I'm probably going to enjoy Cushing's performance, if nothing else. And it is great seeing how nicely remastered this is as well, with the gorgeous Technicolor of the era.
I don't know how you do the magic with the inside of this room, but as far as being...
This reminds me a little bit of Star Trek in the sense that it's all about colour, wasn't it? I mean, colour TV was coming in. That's one of the reasons why Star Trek had the those primary colours. And obviously, this film, I'm sure, was marketed on the fact that it was colour. The fact that you could see the Daleks in colour, and hence the diversity of colours that they've got here. And you can see here, look at all of the switches and everything. And I love that. I love how unashamedly colourful this is. And that was very much in the spirit of the time. And, I do kind of rue the day that digital colour correction was invented and suddenly all films were either all blue or all brown. And, even if they had colour in them, they still felt very monochrome. So yeah, it's always nice when you see a film that's just awash with colour. I love how when the Daleks talk, there's little bits of movement, because otherwise you'd just be watching these static things with a voiceover. And it's a clever little dissolve in and out. This though, that looks cool. Look at that colourful Dalek there, and the Christmas wrapping paper on the wall. I will say that this does kind of, in a way, lend itself more to a movie than a TV show. I talked about how the serial did feel a little bit padded. particularly, I mean, and this might still come unstuck in a similar way, but if you think about, there were 25 minutes each, and there were 7 parts, so it was like well over 2 hours. And I think that, an hour 20, 25, a nice tight running time, feels right for the amount of story that there was, that Terry Nation created. So I think that the brevity of the film is something that I suspect is going to pay off for it. I'm a big soundtrack geek, by the way, and I might have to hook myself up with this one. I think you saw a little bit of the. You go back a moment. I think you actually saw the Dalek inadvertently expose itself a little bit there. Let's see. It pushes her out. Yep, yeah, you saw a bit of it pop up there. High definition, It is nice seeing the Daleks on this scale and widescreen, and and for fans of the show, they must have had mixed feelings about this film, I'd imagine. I mean, this is kind of one for the casuals in some ways, isn't it? And I kind of appreciate it, because I think, if a Star Trek movie was made that were played so fast and loose with the canon, people would flip. But this was a different time, and I kind of like the fact that it's just, they just don't care, They're like, people like the Daleks, people like Doctor Who. Let's do something that's, kind of that. It's kind of liberating to just do it and, write it large. I guess also this is, it's a family film. So the fact that they are somewhat of a family unit, the little girl, the grandfather, the sort of young adults, has this almost Disney-esque kind of Witch Mountain, family on an adventure kind of feeling about it, which is pretty cute and endearing.
What are we going to do?
The series definitely did better is the sort of the consistency of the design aesthetic of the environments. They felt very of a piece with the Daleks and their sort of totalitarian, evil, almost bureaucratic hive mind. Whereas here it's a little bit all over the place, and a little bit less consistent. And it looks more sumptuous in its colour and it's more expensive. But I think that there was a simplicity and like a leanness to the design of the series that is much more frightening, but potentially less cinematic, at least in a 1965 sense of the word. Yeah, the politics on this are very similar to the show. It's still very much presenting pacifism as an admirable ideal, but perhaps sometimes naive and impossible, I guess. It's a little bit of Forbidden Planet about this as well. I mean, that would be a big influence. The Bog of Eternal Stench. It's interesting. I've got so used to how enclosed the show is. It's actually kind of startling that things have opened up so much. It's going to be nice to be able to have a colour thumbnail on the YouTube video for a change. Oh no. The Mines of Moria creature's going to have a pop. Oh, that's a nice bit of design. Look at that. Very bit of science fiction imagery there with the moon or the planet. We're not going to see the monster in the water. That was a great bit of design on the show, actually. It's interesting that there's one design element that surpasses the film. Wow, that's a nice matte painting. Very impressive. I wasn't expecting sort of, grand science fiction vistas in this film. I think that it helps these sequences to have this scale, because a lot of the show was people climbing and winding their way through tunnels, and I think that when you do have a little bit of budget and colour and a widescreen frame and a big score, it just makes those sections more entertaining, I guess. Oh, I love science fiction of that era. I mean, things like Robinson Crusoe on Mars as well. That's another film that I think of. Those types of visuals. Interesting angle. Feel like I'm being straddled, dare I say it, by the Dalek there. Oh, look at that. Synchronized. Also, I guess the whole the lights going when they talk, it is synchronized with their dialogue, and I wonder whether, I mean, was that maybe for the actors? Because I noticed that on the show as well, so they know the timing of when they're meant to be responding. This is the thing that I'm enjoying about the film, just getting to see a whole bunch of Daleks as well, because we know that they're fascists, we know that they're this unbeatable force, so we need to see a lot of them together. The lights going. Oh, we're in caves.
We must be over the worst of it by now, huh?
We're in movie caves now. We're not in TV caves. We're not in Star Trek or Doctor Who. The TV series caves. You're going to have a panic attack like the character in the show. Oh, the classic fire torch. This whole sequence is very similar to the serial. Will you? Will you catch him? Yeah, having crowds of characters makes such a difference. Some great sound design in this film. Despite the lack of the TARDIS energizing sound. There is a... I think Ian's handled this all very well. And they're also casual. They're like, yeah, this is our time machine. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. So this is really interesting because, you know, we've got this successful TV show and they're making a movie. We're used to this now, of course. You know, I mean, Star Trek the Motion Picture came out and that really popularized the idea of, in that instance, resurrecting TV shows. And then we'd see, you know, there was an X-Files movie while the show was still on the air. But this is something different. This is from a different time when, as I mentioned before VCR, really before syndication or cable or streaming, obviously. So, you know, you blink and you miss it. You miss a TV show and it's gone. And we know that the BBC, they wiped the tapes of a lot of these shows. So in many cases, they were gone forever. So this idea that a show was this sacred thing, this idea of fandom, which wasn't even a thing then, and this puritanical sense that you have to honour the show or continue it or adhere to canon, just was not a thing. So the idea was, if you do a movie, then it's a movie. You know, it's adapting, it's different. You change some elements, and you're bringing it to a wider audience, a different audience, a cinema-going audience who are paying and have different expectations. So this is a really fun family science fiction film, and I think this has got more in common with the live-action Disney movies. And you know, visually there are those similarities to some of the Hammer and the Amicus films of the era, but really it's got more in common, I think, with the family cinemas. And even some of the fun stuff with Roy Castle feels like almost something out of a Danny Kaye movie, and I really enjoy those elements. So I think this has been a really interesting experiment because it is very similar to the Terry Nation script in some ways, particularly the stuff around the Thal and the Daleks themselves. But it's with the Doctor and those elements of the show that they really play faster and looser, which is interesting. One of the things I enjoyed about this film is I enjoy it as its own thing, but at the same time, it makes me realise, in contrast, the things in the show that work really well. So I think the edge, the electronic music, the creepiness, the kind of the impressionistic aesthetic and the design and the architecture that we saw for the Daleks, and the sort of somewhat transgressive darkness and ego and, you know, slight villainy of Hartnell's character and the dynamic between him and Ian. It makes you realise how much edge the show has got when you see it removed. So I think this is a lot of fun and really enjoyable, but also it's great to see the Daleks in colour, en masse. I'll take recommendations about what to cover next, but I do think that I am probably just going to jump straight into the next episode of the show that is available after the Daleks. So I will be back to talk about that. Quick reminder that I appreciate feedback. So if you could leave a comment here on YouTube, like and subscribe. I am at Chinstroker on Twitter. And also check out the Rewatch Project with Hannah and Mike, which is the audio podcast that shares this feed on YouTube and is also available as a regular podcast on all of your favourite podcast catcher